So I think because I couldn't walk a block, like one block, I started walking and I increased to about 2 kilometers in the initial stages. I'd still flare up from it and, come back with a burning feet, etc. But I knew exactly how to respond. I'd go to the gym and then I wouldn't be able to return for the next few days or even maybe a week. And I think in the initial stages, the first win was they're telling us to expand. What I'll do is I'm going to put on a pair of shorts, put on my running shoes, go up to the hill that I used to run on with my kids, and we're just going to do one sprint. That's it. And we went up to that hill, and I told the kids, let's video this, and we're going to sprint up this hill. And we took a sprint, and I was like, okay, my legs are still functioning, things are still moving. I actually did it. That was the first win that I posted up on the program. And then that gave me like quite a bit of confidence.
How's it going, everybody? Miguel here from CFS Recovery. In this video, we have Abdul all the way from South Africa. He's made amazing progress. He's working out, he's doing some traveling now, and it's a very different life he was living than he was 6 months ago. So, Abdul, it's great to have you on here. Excited for you to share a lot of your progress and your story and the last year or so dealing with all this. But you want to quickly introduce yourself?
Thanks, Miguel. Yeah, as Miguel said, Abdul Aziz Abed is the name. I'm from Johannesburg, South Africa. I've been going through, we don't know whether it was long COVID or not because I didn't test at the time, but it's largely been a fibromyalgia case. But I've been going through that for approximately a year and 3 months now.
Hmm.
And I've seen quite a bit of recovery over that time. I've been in the program for about, I think, just 7 months. We're approaching the 7 month mark.
Yeah, yeah. And you've been doing amazing. I see all your wins in the wins channel and the videos you put together of you and the family and the kids running around. So that's super exciting. But yeah, let's rewind the clock a little bit here. So you're not sure if it was COVID that tipped you off. What do you think started all of this? Because you were also pushing yourself quite hard at the time, right? Like, was this something lingering for a while and then boom, it all hit you at once? Or what did the onset of this look like?
I think, Miguel, it started a long time ago. And when I say a long time ago, I mean like around 2015, just before my daughter was born. I had an initial episode of this happen, right? So basically, I had graduated with my master's degree finally in urban design and architecture, and then got out into the working world. I was traveling a lot. I was like doing a lot of activity, exercising a hell of a lot as well. Got my dream job, just about to start life. And obviously, my partner and I had planned to get married at the time after fighting for a 10-year long relationship. And we got married, and she fell pregnant shortly after. And when that happened, I think I started getting some abdominal pain at the time. After getting back to work, I had lost about 20 kilograms, and I couldn't train for a while. Carried on going to doctors, no answer still. And then I basically said, okay, it's fine. I'm going to take this into my own hands. I started training again. I left work. I left my job from the corporate sector and started up my own architecture and urban design company. And then for 4 years after that, I was training at my peak. I was happy. Things were happening, and two kids were born. It was an incredibly great time. I think I've had the best training career of my life during that 3 or 4 year period. Nonetheless, in 2020, COVID hit, and it came to South Africa. We were one of the first families to get COVID, our luck. I was fine. The kids were fine. My wife went to hospital for one night, and that was it. She just needed a little bit of oxygen. We recovered through that, and we were a-okay. We then started establishing a new life. So during the lockdown period, I think her father passed away. He spent 3 months in hospital with COVID as well. It was quite an ordeal. He ended up being brain dead, and for a 3 month period, he was just lying there. Very young man, I think 56 or 57 years old, and we lost him. So she was quite distressed as well. Then there was last towards 2022, there was a spate of viruses that we were catching that the kids were bringing back from school, and we're not sure whether it was COVID or not. I suspect it was not because we didn't lose taste and smell this time, but they were pretty vile, right? At the time when that was happening, I was basically running my architectural practice. We were working till 2 a.m. almost every day. I was waking up at like 7 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the morning, training for 3 hours for the Ironman competition, doing weights, doing running, swimming, just about every sort of functional sport you could think of. And yeah, I think I just got tipped over. So at the time, my personal trainer was basically pushing me very hard, and he just continued and continued pushing.
And
I had like
how
a pretty.
how soon after COVID were you training this hard? Was it within a
So
few months?
in fact, I returned. I think whether it was COVID or viral infection, I returned about 4 days after, thinking that
Oh,
I'll be
right
fine.
away. Wow.
And he carried on pushing me and training me. Like, we were probably doing squats, deadlifts, as well as bench press almost every second day in the gym.
That's crazy.
And
Even for a
it was
normal
really
person,
heavy.
that's a lot. Holy cow.
Yeah, and we carried on pushing, but by the third day, I'd always have this profound fatigue that's creeping in, and I couldn't really return to the gym thereafter. So I'd skip that day, and I thought I'd just push through the fatigue itself. A month later, Miguel, what happened was, I just remember walking through the gym, and I had this sensation of like bugs crawling all over my body.
Yeah,
And it was
I
the
know that.
weirdest thing. My feet started burning at the bottom. My hands started burning like incessantly, and it was like, my legs had shut down. I remember this was on the 21st of December 2022, when work had closed, and it was my last day at the gym. And my legs literally shut down, like on the thighs, on the quadriceps. It felt like, there's a heaviness within that. And then the spate of other symptoms started. So I had a total of 31 symptoms developed during that time. And I think that's the day I actually hit the brick wall.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
yeah, that's how it basically began.
That's wild. That's wild. So from the time you got really sick, whether it was COVID or something else, when you took that right before you hit a wall, how long was that? Like when you got sick and then you hit that wall, was that within a few weeks? Because you started
So
working out right away, right?
yeah, totally. So I think it took about 2 months to get to that point. It
God.
started with a little bit of vertigo, and then the viral infection, respiratory stuff really crept in, and it was a GI sort of problem. I've always had issues with the GI, but
Mhm.
and IBS issues, but it was like sort of, this was like on another level. And then
God.
after 2 months is when the sort of real neurological and rheumatological symptoms really kicked in.
Mhm. Got it. And then you got slapped with 31 symptoms. So at that time, when you hit that brick wall, what was that time? Was that December 2022?
Yeah, it was December. It was December 2022. I remember just very close to Christmas, I was in bed. Like the entire December, I was in bed. I was miserable, foggy. I didn't understand what's going on with the body.
Mm,
So
yeah.
it was a very weird time as well, Miguel, because the doctors' offices were all closed. Everyone was on vacation, and I literally thought I was dying. So I was trying to ring up every single doctor possible. I didn't go to the ER during that time, but I did get a GP look at me, and he basically said, "Look, you're not dying. So I think you just need to rest. It's a little bit of an anxiety."
Mhm, mhm. And what were some of the biggest symptoms you had? You mentioned there was, like, pain, there was fatigue. Like, what were the most obvious ones that were bothering you the most out of those
So
31?
the kryptonite symptoms are really it was the fatigue and it was the pain. And the pain started in a very, very sort of sequential manner. It started off with the crawling sensations, which then evolved into like a sort of nerve pain and nerve sensations, which then became muscular pain, which then became joint pain thereafter. And it started symmetrically in my feet, on the foot arches, and in the palms of my hands. I
Mm,
didn't understand what was going on, and then it just spread and it became widespread throughout the body. It's still one of the symptoms that I'm grappling with, and it's actually the last few symptoms that last one of the last few symptoms that I have left
Mm,
from the 31.
got it, got it. And during that December, was that when you hit rock bottom? That was like the worst state you were in this entire journey, or did it get worse after that?
Yes, that was definitely the crash moment, Miguel. And it got so bad that, I mean, like, I remember on the first, I had seen a doctor who was, he was my gastroenterologist, the old one, but he practices medicine in a very sort of holistic manner. He's a specialist physician, but he never really prescribes medication. He always tries the lifestyle change approach first. And I sat down with him. He sent me for full blood count test. On the 1st of January, I remember going up to the hospital. I literally parked my car. I couldn't walk, like, I think it was less than about 60 meters. I really couldn't walk. I just got up there. I felt like I'm going to faint, and they pulled blood. The full
Mhm.
blood count came back, and there was nothing wrong. I had, I think, point 0.1. My cholesterol was zero point 0.1 high, or higher than the normal range. The rest was all fine. Kidneys, liver, anything you can think of was perfectly fine. Doctor rings me back. He tells me, Abdul, you should be back on the sports field. There's nothing wrong with you. You're all good. You know.
Wow.
Yet I still felt like I was dying. I mean, I had the heart palpitations were crazy. The burning on the skin was just like absolutely crazy. Brain fog. I could literally not look at a screen for more than half an hour. When work resumed again, I had seen a number of other doctors, probably over 20 specialists that I saw, excluding the natural paths and Ayurvedic specialists as well. But I literally got to work, Miguel, and I had my head down on the desk. My staff asked me, like, what's going on? And there was this sort of really lingering doom and gloom feeling across the office. Like it was like, is he dying or what's going on with him?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that persisted for quite some time.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So you get to the point where you are in December, you're in bed most of the time, then you try going back to work and it's just rough with all the symptoms. You're kind of just surviving at that point. All the doctors, they're telling you your blood count's normal, you're fine, go back to doing sports. What other things did you try to do in order to fix this over the next
So
several months?
I think I rabbit holed a lot. I went to the neurologist first, right? And I think he was one of the only. Okay, no, no. Before I went to the neurologist, I went back to the gastroenterologist, who's also a physician, and we
Mhm.
sat down and he started testing aggressively. So what he did was he ordered more blood work, and he also had me strapped up with a Holter monitor over 24 hours. Because
Mhm.
literally, what was happening after the December period was I was waking up every hour with an adrenaline surge,
Oh man,
and I was hallucinating. It was horrible.
scary,
And
terrifying.
terrifying, absolutely terrifying. And then he ordered all this blood work, had the halter put on, the whatever monitors were required. And guess what? My heart rate was a little bit high on the halter. I think it was 80 or something, or 80, 85 average heart rate over 24 hours, which is a
Mhm.
little bit high, but I mean, it's under 100, so it wasn't too bad.
Mhm.
And the blood work, again, everything clear, like nothing to look at. And then I decided, okay, let's leave this. Let me go to the neurologist. Went up to one neurologist. I remember my heart pounding in his office,
Yeah.
and he was like a to the point guy.
Yeah.
And I remember he still looked at me and said, "You behave like Andrew Tate." That was his first joke. That's how
What?
hardcore he was. And then
That's
he
what he
said to
said?
me, yeah, yeah, yeah. And my wife was sitting next to me, and she's like, he's going mental. But anyway, he told me, I guarantee you, these were his words, I guarantee you your blood tests are going to come clear again. And I was like, okay, let's do what we need to do. So he said to me, uh, he ordered bloods again, and the creatinine kinase was slightly high, slightly elevated, but nothing too major, right?
Mhm.
And it came back, and everything was normal. And I was like, nah, this neurologist doesn't really know what he's doing. He's just being obnoxious. He's being rude. He's dismissive. I'm going to another one. I went to another one. She booked me into hospital for about, I think, 3 or 4 days. She literally did MRI scans. She brain MRI and back. She did like nerve conduction tests as well.
Hmm.
She did an EEG, all the sort of baseline stuff. Tested for vasculitis because my palms, I had a bit of what they call Raynaud's phenomenon,
Yeah.
where the palms and foot soles get really red and blue,
Yeah.
especially after activity and when there's temperature intolerance. And hey, to no surprise, she said to me, Nothing's wrong with you." And I walked out of there, went to another neurologist again. He looked at the blood work, he looked at everything, referred me to a psychiatrist. He literally thought I was mental again, you know. Went to the psychiatrist. The psychiatrist obviously prescribed medication, which I never took. I was like not daring enough to go on like a huge dose of medication.
Hmm.
And once I started losing with these guys, Miguel, I went to an Ayurvedic specialist and another GP, right? The GP did to me what exactly what they did to you. I probably did over 60 IV drips as well.
Oh, like B vitamins, Myers cocktail, like adrenal stuff. Yeah.
Exactly. And it was NAD plus. Like I think that was the big thing with COVID. Like NAD plus is
Yeah.
what's gonna get you out
Yep.
of this, you know.
And
It would elevate me a little bit for the day, go back to gym. After that, brick wall again. You know,
yep.
it was
Yeah,
crazy.
that's what happened to me. Like I kept taking it and I was like, this is great. All right, time to resume my life again. But I wasn't dealing with the stress that I kept adding into my life. I was trying to jump back in too soon, but it's because no one ever told me what was actually going on. I didn't even know what they were fixing, to be honest, with the IV drips. They said it was my adrenals. Now I know it wasn't really just my adrenals, but yeah, you feel good for a few days. You actually feel great. But then it wears off pretty quick. And when it wears off, oh man, you're in a hole, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a hole, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think after that, like I wasn't seeing any sort of results, you know, at all. So I decided to go to a naturopath as well.
Hmm.
The naturopath prescribed some herbal medication and stuff, and you know, the pain was very intensive. Like it was crazy. I've never felt pain that excruciating ever before.
Yeah.
And it was difficult to walk, you know. Like I mean, the muscle fatigue, which there's still traces of that there. I think that's the last bit that's there. It was insane. It was wild, Miguel. Like you know, walking literally, you holding handrails, and the vertigo was like I
Yeah.
think it had just compounded and compounded, and it was like non-stop, you know, all the way.
Yeah.
So during that time, Miguel, I took a month off gym. I thought it would help. It was our fasting month as well. I thought that would help because fasting was apparently a great thing for long COVID, which proved not to be. I fasted
Yeah.
a full 30 days, 12, I think 16 hours a day, nothing,
Holy cow.
absolutely
Did you feel worse when you did that? Because your blood sugar was all over the place, or what did that
nothing. Yeah,
feel like?
it was crazy. I think during the day I was like, you know, still pretty much knocked out. Like I wasn't able to function too well. So I was spending a lot of time in bed or on the couch.
Yeah.
And then usually we have evening prayers where you stand for an hour. I like standing was literally impossible. It's still a little bit difficult, but I think at that time it was like I'd stand and then the next day my legs would just be on fire and the muscles would feel like somebody's literally ripping them out of from
Mhm.
my foot soles, you know.
Yeah.
So that didn't work either, you know.
Yeah, that's
And
the thing with fasting. People try that, but I think when you're dealing with a hypersensitive nervous system like long COVID or CFS, you need those calories or you need that sugar to stabilize your blood sugar because it'll be up and down. Like sometimes people feel like they have diabetes or something because their blood sugar drops so quick. I can't imagine fasting while having this. Although sometimes I did, those days where I would crash and then end up in a hospital, they don't allow you to eat. And then you're in a waiting room for like 6 hours and then, yeah, and then your blood sugar is just tanking. And yeah, it's crazy. But the fact that you did that for 30 days, I mean, that kind of shows you're willing to do anything at that point. You're just trying to look for a solution, right? Hoping it worked.
yeah. Like I'd do anything just to get out of that sort of rut or boat, you know. And
Yeah.
it was like, and that's why I think I exhausted all doctors. It was even endocrinologists,
Yeah.
Miguel. I walked into the endo. I think we had just had a call at the time. I spoke to you telephonically. The line was really bad at the time.
Yeah, I remember that.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and I went to the endo, and the cortisol was fine. Testosterone total was fine. The I think the free test was fine. Total was had dropped a little bit, but it was still within range. So
Mhm.
the endo basically looked at me and he said, "The only thing I can do to you is prescribe estrogen blockers." And at that stage, the doctor said, all the other doctors said, "No, no, 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 no. Like you should not be playing with this guy's hormones. You know,
Oh,
he's
okay.
fine. He's within range. Things are okay." So I opted not to. And then once I started the program, so after all those doctors' visits and stuff, I started the program. It was almost like my last resort.
Yeah.
And
Well, how
then I
how'd
was
you
like,
find us? How'd you actually find us before you joined?
so that's an interesting one. I was driving up to Limpopo province. So from Johannesburg to Limpopo province, it's a sort of rural area where my wife's family comes from. So I drove up there, Miguel, and I was feeling sick, man. Like when I arrived there, I thought I'd rest and I'd have a bit of a holiday. I literally thought, like, this is my last day. So I was sitting at home and, I was Googling, of course, like Dr. Google. And then I stumbled across a guy by the name of Kyle, who had a YouTube channel, which was a very ad hoc sort of YouTube channel. He spoke about long COVID and he was speaking about the nervous system and like it took him 2 years to literally recover. Like, he all the steps were, and I was like, this sounds exactly like what I have. And then he mentioned on that call that long COVID is the same as CFS. And then obviously I rabbit holed into CFS on YouTube and Raylan popped up and you popped up. And I was
Mm,
like, okay, this guy is describing exactly what I'm going through. Like he's
mhm.
been through exactly the same thing, you know?
Got it. Got it. Yeah, and especially all the symptoms because I have so many different videos on specific symptoms. You probably saw like the videos about pain and burning sensations and all the vertigo and stuff like that, and you're like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. So that's when you reach out, and we had a few chats back and forth. You had a chat with Rochelle, who was on our team, on our onboarding team, and myself, and then finally you decide to pull the trigger. And I do remember this was like your last resort. I remember you're pretty hesitant at first because you're like, I tried so many things. I can't afford to make another mistake and do something that doesn't work. Because Miguel, I've tried everything, man. If I try this, I hope this works. And I was like, I promise you, Abdul, trust me. If you show up to the calls, you just show up to the calls, it'll work. And I remember you came on board. And what was it like, that first month in the program when you were on calls with people and learning this stuff and really figuring out that this is a nervous system issue? What was that like?
I think so. Like it was kind of like put your trust in a friend situation, right? You're absolutely right. Last resort and stuff like that. So, in the initial stages, I signed up to the program, and Miguel, I just like to mention before we speak about that as well. This stuff really rips you off everything. It rips you off your job. It rips you off your every penny that you've made. Prior to this happening, I was or at least thought that I was very successful. Everything was coming together for me. I bought the car of my dreams. I basically bought a new house. My kids were going to one of the best schools in Johannesburg. They thankfully still there. And and that's why I think I was willing to go to that extent of actually like saying, this is my last resort, I'm going to buy into the program. And then when we got going with the program, I think the experience was a little bit different. So Krista sends me this message, a video message, and she's like, I'm your coach.
It's like a
And then we
welcome
get
message.
on to this yeah, and we get onto the smaller group calls, and I'm like listening to about this being the nervous system and the mind shift, and all the sort of principles that that they were informing us about, which was very similar to the initial homework that I did on your YouTube videos, right? But I think it was a lot more systematic, and I think Krista was driving the principles like very very clearly, and we relied a lot on her experience. So the part that got me a little bit was the fact that it was the brain retraining part, where your mind shift and changing your thought processes in the North Star. And I'm like,
Mhm.
how is this going to heal me? Like this is basically like, I'm trusting a kid on YouTube, or not a
Yeah,
kid,
yeah.
but
It seems
somebody
so
who's a little
simple,
younger
right?
than you.
Too simple
Uh-huh.
to work. Like like a part of people's brains when they first come across this is either like, "Oh, that's great. This is simple." Other times it's like, "What the heck? It's this simple this whole time?" Like that's all I needed to do. So it's like it can throw people off for sure in the first few weeks. It's surprising, right?
Definitely. And then I think once we got to week 4, week 5, I think they started explaining, Krista explained a lot about the physiology and how the nervous system works, the amygdala, and, the emotional processing versus the logical brain. And those things started, and the polyvagal theory started making a hell of a lot of sense to me. And I was like, aha, this is where we're going with this stuff. I expected a plan, like an exercise workout or a regimen, or the mini challenge kind of did that for us. But I would say that was just to push us a little bit out of the comfort zone, which I appreciated. And we were doing it, and I'm like, but this stuff's making me flare up. Are these guys like out to kill me or something? But I didn't understand the practical implementation of the principles. Once those principles started getting harnessed over the longer term, that's when you start seeing the fruits of your work really, really coming in.
Mhm.
I remember also being very afraid, like from the small group, we were then transported into the bigger calls, which was a little bit daunting initially, but I think it's evolved into a community that is absolutely amazing. The stories you hear, the recoveries you see, it makes you, and the moment you rabbit hole, Miguel, there's somebody to push you in line. There's
Mhm.
someone to push you in line. So I think that's the one of the most valuable things with this entire program. The
Mhm.
theory is there. We can learn the theory. We can do a lot of things, but the value really lies in other people who are moving along this journey with you, and there to support you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So some of the principles, what is like the top one or two principles that really helped you have that mind shift or help you make progress? For a lot of people, it's having the mind shift that okay, a flare up is not a bad thing, it's actually a good thing, and also responding well to symptoms, that's when the real progress is made. What were some of those principles for you that made the biggest difference?
I think it's the golden rule that you always speak about is respond well. And what I'm starting to realize now, that would be the top sort of principle or overarching ideology that I think is applicable, right? What is also helpful, and I didn't understand this in the initial stages, was the execution of progress cycles and the
Mhm.
multiple progress cycles that eventually increases your baseline. Pacing is a big thing in many other circles. But I think here, what we're learning is to listen very carefully to the body. That you push a little bit, and then you have to pull back as soon as you flare up. But during that time that you're pulling back is when the magic actually happens, where you're responding well to
Exactly.
symptoms. Once you come out of that again, you basically reach a new baseline. You unlock a new level, almost like a video game, and
Yep.
then and you see yourself climbing. And sometimes you don't realize the progress. I didn't realize there was any progress at all, until like at home, people were looking at me weirdly, and they were like, my kids were like, "Hey, Dad, you picking us up again? Hey, Dad, you're dropping us off at school again. You're available on weekends. You like running around. Like, what's going on? My
Mhm.
wife was like, "You're becoming a lot more tolerable, to be honest about it." And they noticed the progress. I think the coaches in the program noticed progress as well. I didn't really see it in the initial stages, and then I said, "Hang on." One day I was sitting down and I was like, "But hang on." I had a symptom chart that I had drawn up, right? And Krista and I were doing this experiment of like looking at individual symptoms and then drawing up a response to each one, which I think was a pretty it was a bit of a failure on our part or on my part, but I think she was trying to teach me a lesson that, and I got called out for it on the group by one of the other members, that Abdul, you're focusing a lot on symptoms. Don't focus on symptoms, pin it on the NS and focus on response to symptoms, no matter what
Mhm.
it is. You just got to put it on the NS, on the nervous system.
Mhm.
So yeah, that was like in terms of principles. I think from there, the progress cycles really shot up, and it was just yeah, it's amazing. It's still very much a work in progress, Miguel. Still a mile to go, but I think there's been quite phenomenal progress.
Oh yeah, like you're definitely out of the trenches now, compared to 6 months ago. So let's talk about some of your wins, man, cuz you've had some pretty amazing wins. I see the videos you send us and put in the wins channel of running around with the kids, racing them, swimming with them. You went boating with them as well. It was super exciting. You're lifting pretty heavy weights again, squatting heavy, doing all that stuff. So, what was probably your biggest first win in the program? What was a big win where you were like, "Holy cow, I can't believe this is happening. This stuff really works. This is awesome." What was that first experience for you?
So I think because I couldn't walk a block, like one block, I started walking and I increased to about 2 kilometers in the initial stages. I'd still flare up from it and come back with a burning feet, etc. But I knew exactly how to respond. I'd go to the gym and then I wouldn't be able to return for the next few days or even maybe a week. And I think in the initial stages, the first win was I was like, okay, they're telling us to expand. What I'll do is I'm gonna put on a pair of shorts, put on my running shoes, go up to the hill that I used to run on with my kids, and we're just gonna do one sprint. That's it, And we went up to that hill, and I told the kids, let's video this, and we're gonna sprint up this hill. And we took a sprint, and I was like, okay, my legs are still functioning, things are still moving. I actually did it. That was the first win that I posted up on the program, and then that gave me like quite a bit of confidence.
Mhm.
And then closer to the time, I think work was getting quite hectic. I didn't stop working through all of this, right? But my partner told me, let's go up to Mauritius. And I was like, no ways, this is not going to happen. I can't do this. Like, I'll never survive. And she said to me, okay, let's try. And I was contemplating, should I go, shouldn't I go? And then she comes and puts the flight tickets on my desk, and
She
she's
already
like,
bought them.
we're going. Like, there's nothing you can do. So I spoke to the group and we were like, okay, guys, I have this trip coming up. I don't know what to do. She's like insistent on the stuff. And they were like, go for it, Abdul. Just go, like you're going to be fine. We'll be there to back you up and stuff. And I was like, okay, fine. So we get to the airport, Miguel. And immediately when we get to the airport, I start flaring up like mad, like crazy,
Just because you were
And I was,
anticipating it and you were anxious?
yeah, and I think more than anxious, it was the stimulus.
Yeah, oh, yeah,
So
it's very stimulating, airport.
yeah, airports are like the lights, the announcements, the people. It's indoors, and I was like, okay, it's fine. So we get onto the plane. We landed in Mauritius. I was still flaring quite badly. And then within about 4 hours that we were there for like 4 hours, and I was like, hey man, the symptoms are really tapering down. Like the only thing I really have is the stiff legs and like a bit of pain in the legs, etc. But it's fine. And then I mean, we spent about what 9 days in Mauritius on the beach, the best beaches ever. We went out onto sea and swam with the fish and the turtles, and I was able to dive off and take runs on the beach with the kids. Miguel, for the first time, I could put my daughter on my shoulders again, and she could jump off. That was something we loved doing. Pick my son up, put him in a bus, and we were touring the place. It was an absolutely amazing feeling. And then when we came back, right? So we rested and I slept while we were there, ate well. And when we came back, immediately when we get to the airport, I start flaring again, like hectically.
Yeah.
I just I just remember putting my head down on the trolley and I'm like, guys, it's not happening. Like I don't know what we're gonna do. And then we got back to to Joburg and it was fine. Like things were okay. The regular symptoms were still there. Uh, Occasional flare-ups as well, but nothing too major. So that was a huge win as well.
Man, that's
Um,
epic. That's epic. So 9 days and you survived and you were doing really well there, thriving. And were there lots of periods during that 9 days where you actually felt minimal symptoms? You almost kind of forgot you had CFS when you were swimming with the fish and boating and doing all that stuff?
Definitely. Definitely. Like, I mean, when I was in the water, I was forgetting sometimes that I have these issues. It was a total mental shift, and it helped with the mind shift, I think, Surprisingly as well, Miguel, that was on my North Star, was to visit the coast, one of the most beautiful coastlines in the world. And I can't believe I did it. I was not fully recovered, but
Mhm.
I did it, and we had a fantastic time. I don't regret it at all. And yeah, that was amazing. But the follow up to that, I think, was once we started actually, gaining a little bit more confidence. I started the sports again. I started boxing again. Like, I think I posted a win on
Yep.
that. Doing lots of heavy bag drills. I remember the first time I did some heavy bag drills, my hands would shake, and I would actually get like, they would go really red and blue, and the muscles just felt like, they were about to collapse, in my hands. That has stopped, and I'm able to do like pretty intensive heavy bag drills. I started squatting again. It's still a bit uncomfortable when I do it, and I have to take breaks because the pain flares up. But yeah, and then cycling. I'm now running. I think this morning I did a 2K run, and I think I walked about 4Ks.
Holy
I was
cow.
afraid to run. I was
That's
afraid to run,
wild.
Miguel. Like, I was literally, before the running started, I was walking and I was like, do I run? And I was like, no, 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 don't do it. Like, it's too painful. And one day I just decided I'm gonna run. Like, I'm just gonna do it. And I've built up to like 2Ks now. Walking capacity, absolutely amazing. I'm doing 10Ks comfortably. No stresses. And I'm again the guy in the front of my family saying, guys, walk faster. I was always that guy. And there came a time where they were telling me, like, you need to speed up.
That's wild.
So
You're more active than me, man. You're running further than me. You're lifting heavier. Well, yeah, I think you're squatting more than me now. That is freaking awesome, dude. So,
yeah, the numbers have increased, Miguel. Like the squats, I think initially I was doing about 160 kilograms, and now I'm doing 130. It does tank me, like, hectically, but deadlift, surprisingly, I used to do 200, and then I'm now doing 160 again.
holy cow. Is that 3 plates per side? More than 3 plates, right?
No, it's more. It's more. It's three plates and a 10, a half a plate.
So for you
Yeah.
guys watching this right now, that's about 335 pounds. That's a lot of weight. I think that's like near my max, and you're repping that out. So that's crazy, dude.
Yeah, we used to go 4 plates, man. Miguel, it was awesome. But I'm also realizing it's not sustainable. In
Mhm,
the bench press, I max off at 100 kilograms these days, and I leave it at that. It's not
mhm.
sustainable because that's what drove me into the sort of illness the first time. So I won't work to failure. I don't work to failure, and I
Mhm.
keep my breaks longer. I'm being a bit responsible in terms of how I'm doing it. Uh,
Yeah.
but but Miguel, the great news is after the weights, we do Tai Chi as well every Saturday and every Tuesday as a family
Oh, that's
thing.
awesome, man. So you're
And
getting the balance of it. It's not just all go, go. It's like you get the yin to your yang.
exactly. And then also the 12 laps of swimming, sometimes after weights in a 50-meter pool. So yeah, that's grown. Like the swimming capacity has really grown.
That's awesome, dude. That's awesome. So you do the tai chi with the family as well?
Yeah, it's basically our gyms in South Africa have like a creche or mini gym for the kids. So we book the kids in, and then she and I, the lady and I, do the Tai Chi, and it's with a lot of like older people, almost twice our age,
Yeah.
and it's so strange because, like, I still have the shaky leg thing, where my legs get very stiff, weak, and shaky and stuff like that. And I look at some of these guys that are 70 years old, and I'm like, they are making it through these sessions, they crushing it, and I'm standing here all numb, with my kryptonite symptom flaring up, with not much stamina in my legs. But what it does is it kind of brings the calmness, and it also motivates me to say, you know what, Abdul, you're 36 years old, you probably have another 35 years to do the stuff, hopefully.
Mhm.
And there's no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. Yeah, you've definitely brought the fitness back up to a whole new level. When 6 months ago you weren't doing any of this stuff, right? Like you definitely were you going to the gym when you started?
I used to go to the gym, but it was almost like torture, Miguel.
Yeah, so it
When
wasn't even fun. It's like I
it
feel
was.
like I have to go to the gym, but I don't even want to at this point. Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember, like, there's a staircase down into the gym, and I walk down the steps. I'm still a little bit wobbly, not too bad. After I do the boxing drill, surprisingly, my legs are fine, like they're moving again, because I think it calms the NS down, the nervous system down, and then the body can function again. But in the initial stages, I remember walking down those steps, and I was wobbling all the way down. And then this is the same guy, mind you, that used to put like 160, 170 kilos on his back and squat, right? And I'm wobbling down the staircase. And a lot of the times, what was happening was when I get into the gym, I'd see this like fog. It would look like the entire gym is covered with smoke, in
It's like
smoke,
hazy, right?
very hazy, and the sounds would be too loud, and
Yeah.
it was very I couldn't tolerate it much, so I did taper off gym for quite some time, like during the initial stages.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's amazing how much you can do now. Like some normal people can't even squat that much or run that much or walk that much. So your capacity is very, very high now. So in terms of adjustment periods, do you still get small flare-ups here and there, but they're just a lot lighter and they're shorter now? Or what are those like these days?
Yeah, so the surprising thing is I've never known when I'm in one or not in
Yeah,
one.
it's very
you know
blurry. It's a very
it's
blurry
blur.
line.
Yeah, so what subsequently what's happened is I think they shorter the flare ups. What I call them flare ups, right? Or like phases of discomfort. They're a little bit shorter. And I'll tell you why. Is the penny dropped really for me when I went to gym and I was able to return the next day and the next day and the next day. The consistency started building. So Krista and I worked out like an initial baseline workout, which so I can't gym one body part at a time because the muscles fatigue very easily.
Mhm.
So we do like a split, with legs and a lower body, upper body, and we take it very easy. So once that consistency started building, I was like, oh, hang on, there's some changes here. I'm not skipping 4 days or skipping 3 days, and that's when the penny really dropped. And then above that, I think what also helped to make me realize that flare ups were less were my colleagues at work. They were like, hang on, Abdul, you're working a full 8-hour day. You're sitting and designing, buildings. You were struggling to design, like you couldn't conceptualize, you couldn't
Mhm.
design, you couldn't sit with the urban design frameworks either. You're drawing by hand again. Like, my hands would shake. So I would just leave the pen. I was like, no, they're going to notice that my hands are shaking.
Yeah.
I was, yeah, and I was attending meetings. Initially, Miguel, I remember attending a meeting and it was a night presentation. I think over 100 people there, and the nausea, the vertigo, the heart palpitations, everything just knocked me on that night. But Krista, like, fortunately, I was in contact with Krista, and she helped me like get back on track. It also
Mhm.
happened when I had to travel 4 hours out to one of the stadium projects that we're working on. It was 4 hours and an overnight and a presentation to the ministers of the country in Maseru, and absolutely nerve wracking. I survived that also. The program helped me really get through that.
Mhm.
And then these reoccurred, both of them, both occurrences. And yesterday was one. I did the presentation. Miguel, my symptoms were minimal. And I returned to work this morning, had a minor flare up, and I went to gym. I'm fine. I'm okay. So capacity is definitely building. Yes, I'm functional with symptoms, but capacity is definitely built.
Oh, yeah, and some people listening to this right now, they're probably so confused, like, "Wait a minute, you flared up, but you went to the gym." Yeah, for everybody watching this, your flare-ups, they they might not even be flare-ups, like, they're definitely symptoms. Because I remember I had this, like, I always had something lingering. There's always something, but it was so minimal. Most of the time, it wasn't noticeable. But if I push it a little bit, yeah, I'd notice it a little bit more, but I could still function with them. but it wasn't front and center in my life. It was like in the background. It's like, oh yeah, legs are hurting a little bit today, or yeah, I feel a bit nauseous, or little tiny bit of a headache, but I could still perform, completely fine. So it does get to that point when you're more functional. The adjustment periods, they're very, very tolerable, very tolerable. And all that's needed to do in those adjustment periods is slow down a tiny bit, and then they go away fairly quickly. And sometimes doing activity actually makes the adjustment periods go away,
Yes,
which is the
exactly.
interesting part. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happened today. So I think with fibromyalgia, it's the my doctor who diagnosed me with it, right? The GP, he explained this very well. He said there's a dopamine drop in the brain, and your serotonin and dopamine levels are just totally out. No scan or test can identify that, right? But what effectively happens is your body starts putting out symptoms that can't be explained. And one of the sort of huge symptoms of fibro is it feels like the nerves are not controlling the skeletal system correctly. But it will take time for that one to almost peel off. If I think I'm left with like four symptoms, Miguel, and this has been the kryptonite for sure. And what Coach Junior was telling me, which makes a lot of sense, is that basically what it's doing is it wants me to sit down or lie down consistently. That's why it's shutting the legs down, or it's shutting the muscles down. There's like fatigue and stuff like that, and it's trying to put me in that position to keep me safe a lot of the time. But I just have to constantly remind the brain that, hang on, everything is fine. Structurally, there's nothing wrong. We can go on a little bit. It shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
I think
And
the day that one drops, Miguel, I'll be the happiest man alive.
yeah, it's close. It's coming. It's coming. And then sometimes, yeah, with that dopamine drop, you just do something like a light workout or a walk, and then boom, dopamine's back, and the symptom kind of goes away for a little bit and it comes back. I remember there were times when I got to that functional level where I felt way better if I was moving around and doing stuff than if I sat down and did nothing. Because if I sat down and did nothing, my legs would tingle, they would burn a little bit. It would be my nerves would be crawling. But if I'm walking around, it's like my brain has something else to focus on, some other stimulus to keep it busy. So you're probably in
Yeah.
that stage right now.
Yeah. It's the stage functional with a few symptoms here and there, and it's just
Exactly.
got to keep the mind clear. So I also had a lot of anxiety. Like I think my anxiety was through the roof,
Yeah.
and I was literally planning an exit route, Miguel, like on 9 occasions. And I'm not ashamed to say this. I realized that I never suffered severely with anxiety or depression. I always thought I did, but I never did because this depression, for people who really struggle with depression, I empathize with them because the feeling, Miguel, is you just not in control of anything. But that's worn off like quite well. I think it comes, the panic attacks come, but I catch myself out. I'm like, aha, here you are. You're
Yeah.
trying to get me again. They last
Exactly.
for like an hour, half an hour, and they're quite funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're weird.
Yeah, the anxiety and depression, that those can get pretty intense throughout this whole journey, especially during the flare-ups, and the mood is all over the place. So, what would you say is probably the biggest difference now than 6 or 8 months ago, even before you found out these principles? So, we already know you can do so much more physically. How about mentally? What have been the biggest changes there? Like, how has this changed your perspective on, kind of how you live your life and how hard you push yourself?
Mentally, there's been a huge shift, Miguel. So, the physical stuff is great, but I feel it's a secondary factor. It's a nice to have. The
Yeah.
mental stuff or the mental shift that's really happened is I've realized, why am I stressing about certain things that are beyond my control? And that's been the biggest realization. We stress a lot about work. Work will always be there. The cycle never ends. We stress about relationships. It will always be there. The cycle never ends. We stress about finances. It will always be there. And we try and get things done perfectly. And the big mental shift for me has been that life's never perfect. Entrepreneurs, they start things up and have a great idea and they succeed, and then they could potentially fall and be left with nothing. And after that, they reboot their lives again and they get up and they walk again. And they crawl, they walk and run. and they do it in a more sustainable way. So that's what I'm starting to And the surprising thing is, since I've started applying that logic to things, Miguel, I'm finishing. My practice is finishing deadlines 2 days before the time. We're getting, like, the deadlines are happening, and I'm like, how did this happen? Because before we'd be pushing till the minute before. Everyone would be sleeping at 1 and 2 in the morning. Everyone would be miserable, and then we hop on to the next task, and it was work, 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 go, go, go. And that mental shift has been incredible,
Mhm.
because now we're taking days off. We're learning to balance our time better. We're learning that we need to focus our energies in certain places. I'm sleeping a lot better. I mean, I'm getting stretches of sleep without the nightmares, without the dreams, without the adrenaline surges. Some nights it's difficult because of the buzzing, but that mental shift has helped me to say, cut off work. The world can wait. Nobody's dying.
Yeah.
If it's delivered, and I hate to say this, but if it's delivered a little bit late, no one will die. But we try our best to get it done on time.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. It's more
especially in
sustainable.
Africa, yeah, exactly. Especially in Africa, people just give you unrealistic deadlines all the time. This shouldn't stress you out. This shouldn't tip you over. You
Yeah.
should manage it to the best of your ability and sustainably, and you'll be fine. You know.
Mhm. I think what you said is so important. It's understanding that you can't control everything. When I realized that and that clicked for me, that just took a huge weight off of my shoulder. Because you're right, it's never going to be perfect. It's never going to go perfectly according to plan. No matter how well you plan and prepare for things, there's always going to be some kind of curveball. So, just like responding well to symptoms, you have to respond well to life, whether it's work or deadlines or things like that. It's all about the response. And if you're able to approach it with more of an understanding that, okay, sure, this thing didn't go according to plan. It's not a failure. It's not a bad thing because the expectation is that nothing will be perfect. So that's how I see things now as well. When things are going sideways or I'm going through challenges, I'm like, good. It's supposed to be challenging. It's not supposed to be perfect. And if it's too
Yeah.
perfect, then I start getting
Yeah.
anxious when things are going too well. I'm like, this is not right.
Exactly.
This is weird.
Yeah.
Something
No,
bad is
exactly.
probably gonna happen, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Another big reflection on that as well is, my kids used to be my burden. That's how I saw them before this happened. When this happened, Miguel, all the friends fell off to the wayside. Everybody I knew just fell off to the wayside. It was literally, the immediate family that was by my side. My parents never really understood. They still don't understand what I'm going through. But my wife understands. She understood, and it's helped us to. I could have lost the relationship with her. I wouldn't blame her if she walked off, but she's been incredibly supportive. She's been by my side, and the kids were initially seen as that burden, that, "Ah, guys, I just don't have time. I have to work. I have to do this. I have to do that." Subsequently, they've become my best friends, and now they're a blessing. I can't wait to spend time with them. I can't wait to take them to school. Their smiles, their laughter, their joy, that mind shift has been incredible. I'll give anything in this world just to spend time with my kids, just to be there with my wife and kids. It's the most amazing feeling. And that mind shift, I was like, why did I lose out on the initial years? Like,
Yeah.
why? I've lost out on 5, 6 years with these guys trying to build a business and trying to build things. I shouldn't have done that. Like, I should have given them the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
that
it's
mentally,
amazing.
that's
It's amazing how the world works, right? Like, and how life works, because now you're starting to reap the benefits of getting CFS, right? Imagine if you never got CFS, you'd still be working a ton. You'd still probably see them as a burden. Like, who knows what could have happened, the path you were going down. And because of CFS, yeah, you had to jump in the fire. It took you into the trenches where you had to reinvent yourself. But look what came out of it. Like, there's so many benefits. Like, even me now, I spend so much more time with my family than before I got sick. Every weekend I'm spending time with them, eating lunch with them, making time for them. Whereas before I would see that as a chore, you know, as messed
yeah,
up as that sounds. But now
yeah,
I appreciate
exactly. Yeah. I think also in university, Miguel, we get taught this. You're applauded for working through the night. And I mean, like, I remember very similar symptoms when I was doing my master's thesis in the last 2 weeks. I think I slept Literally for 2 weeks, I didn't get any sleep. And now I realized it was the nervous system. I was literally
Yeah,
like trembling, buzzing at night, waking up. As soon as the thesis document was submitted and we concluded, it stopped. I lived a normal life and it stopped again. So, you applauded in the work environment as well as in, academic environment for being great at what you do and pulling long hours. It's just not sustainable at the end of the day. So
absolutely. Yeah.
you need the balance.
And I think there are times and places where sometimes you need to push yourself, to that limit if you need to get stuff done, especially if you're running a business or there's a lot on the line. But the problem is when that is sustained long term and that becomes the new normal, because I'll still push myself quite hard nowadays, but I'll also take a step back and take like a week off or a week and a half
Yes.
just to hit the mental reset button, because I think today's society, it is kind of like a badge of honor. Oh, you can work 12 hours in a day, especially in the, what is this thumbs up thing? Especially in the entrepreneurial world. Um, it is seen as like a badge of honor, but that can that can bite you as well if you do that too much, you know.
Yeah.
So learning to balance it, that has been one of the biggest things for me is that
Definitely.
balance.
Yeah. I read something somewhere that all the most successful entrepreneurs in the world, no matter how pressing the issues of the day, would take an afternoon nap, from around 3 to 4. The only guy who doesn't do it is Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He's gotten by without it. So he was mentioned specifically, but that those were the words. No matter how pressing the issues of the day, they take that nap, and that's to just retreat from the world a little bit. And I find that, like, that's been helping me a hell of a lot. I day nap as well now.
Yeah, me too.
Some days I don't get the opportunity to do it, but that booster nap of an hour a day just breaks my day in half, and it kind of helps me to cope with the dipping point. You
Yeah.
know.
And it actually helps with productivity. Some people say, "Oh, it's wasted time. I could have been working." But no, if you recharge for 30 minutes, 60 minutes, well, guess what? You get to go back, to your work or whatever you're doing with more focus and squeeze more out of the task. So
Yeah.
it's changing your perception of what productivity is because sometimes rest can be very, very productive because that sets you up
Yeah.
for the next day. So yeah, I'll take naps every now and then as well. I think the whole last 7 days, I think I took naps for like 3 or 4 of the days. Definitely needed
Yeah.
it, and I
No,
didn't
it's
feel bad
awesome. And
about
I
it.
think it's restorative rest, right?
Yeah.
Because you can be resting, but your mind is not resting.
Mhm.
And it's the mind. So this is a strange one, Miguel, is that I realized that your thoughts and emotions really influence the chemical balance in your body.
Yeah.
I used to think it's the physical stuff, like, oh, okay, I went and did weights today. Yes, there is a bearing there, but sometimes you'll be flaring up and you're wondering, like, but I did nothing. I literally like
Yeah.
walk from here to the post box. I'm flaring up like crazy. But the emotional thoughts, the emotions and thoughts that have been sort of compounding and ringing in your mind, they start affecting the chemical balance in your body, which then affects or influences physical symptoms from there.
Yeah.
So controlling the mind and controlling the thoughts is a big one. It's a huge one. And when
Yeah.
you're in an AP, like AP brain is monkey brain,
It
Miguel.
is.
It controls you, but like if you pattern interrupt that stuff,
Yeah.
that's the way to go, man. You cut it off there, and like you'll see, your symptoms will start gradually decreasing.
Exactly, exactly, but, like, you have to be aware, but once you are aware of what your brain's trying to do, it's so much easier to catch it, but you're right, in an adjustment period, for you guys watching this right now, your brain's gonna be all over the place, you're gonna wanna search Google, you're gonna hear one scary thing from somewhere, and your mind is gonna be latched onto it. It's very easy for your brain to get hooked onto things. It's kinda like, if you were to go fishing, someone throws in a hook, when you're in an AP, yeah, those fish are biting that hook. That fish is your brain latching on to scary things. You'll have one thought of like, wait, what if this is Parkinson's? I'm shaking a lot today. Maybe I have Parkinson's. Boom. Next thing you know, you're like 100% sure you have Parkinson's. That was me. That was me for months. And my grandparents would just look at me like, we're
Yeah.
72 years old. You're 21. You definitely don't have Parkinson's. Like, you're fine.
The only thing I can say is, Miguel, we have very creative brains. Like
Very creative.
Man, the things
creative.
I know about cancer, Parkinson's, what was it, EDS. There were
Yep.
so many things that just the medical terminology that was coming up like with all the time
Yeah. It's
from
crazy.
Google. I was like, man, I know more than the doctors these days.
Yeah.
Like that's so weird, and I'm diagnosing myself with all these things.
Pretty much. Yeah.
What the hell, man? That's
Yeah.
crazy.
It's crazy. It's crazy. So, you know, wrapping up this talk here, I feel like we could talk for hours. There's so much stuff we could talk about, but what would you say to somebody who was in your shoes maybe a year ago and they don't know what to do? They're lost and they almost feel like giving up, right? Kind of where you were before. What kind of words of encouragement would you tell them just to inspire them or to keep them going or to help them out?
So I think the first thing that I'd say to them is basically you need to try and understand what's going on with the body and what's really happening internally, right? That's the huge thing. You also need to really focus on mind shift. But the third pillar, which is probably the most important, is the community and having the support of like-minded people that have been through this. And that's where this program is the gold standard, is because you've got the theory, you've got the principles, etc. And yes, sure, people can do it off your videos that they have on YouTube,
Hmm.
but I think it may not happen that way, or you may not have like complete success, because what this program does for you is it gives you the coach that's behind you all the time, gives you the community members to reach out to, the support that you require, in terms of having like-minded people sitting by your side, and it also gives you like a sort of thorough understanding and experiential value of going through this step by step. It's like they give you the GPS, they give you the motor vehicle, you have to jump into the vehicle and drive. But that GPS is pretty accurate. If you trying to map it out by yourself, it becomes a little hazy and a little bit difficult. And I say this from experience because I tried by myself and I gave up by the third week. I was unable to, I was like, this stuff's not going to help me until I joined the program and realized, okay, this is it. So I would say to people, just hang in there. Don't what Google is telling you is a lie. Or if anyone tells you that you can recover from long COVID, fibromyalgia, or CFS or MCAS, they lying to you.
Hmm.
It's a blatant lie. I've been watching people recover in front of my eyes. I'm seeing myself recover day by day. And yeah, hang in there, get your community support, and you're going to be a-okay.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome, man. And it's so true what you said about the GPS. It's that GPS, it's right in front of you. It's all set up. But in addition to that, whenever there's detours or say you're driving on the road and like a tree falls down or there's a pothole there, well, we're updating that GPS in real time based on, all right, what are you doing this week? Or do you have something coming up? Do you have a trip coming up that you're kind of scared to go on? All right, we'll make tweaks around it. So we're updating the GPS, putting detours in, but we've gotten people to that destination so many times so we know exactly where the turns are, what to avoid, you know if there's a mistake we know how to avoid that next time. So yeah, it's the thing that is going to increase the odds of success the most, compared to doing it by yourself. It can be very tricky, especially when you start going off track. Sometimes you need people on those calls to be like, hey, no, you're doing it wrong. You got to do this and this and this, you know, just to remind you. And when you're around real life examples on real life calls, it makes a huge, huge difference. So, Abdul, we've been going for over an hour here, but is there anything else you want to say to the people watching this right now? Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think, Miguel, I'd just like to thank everyone in the program. Like, that's just been phenomenal. And the relationships that I've grown as well, absolutely phenomenal. With regards to like people out there, the only thing that I can really say is you're going to recover. You just need to do the work. It's possible. Don't be afraid of this stuff. It's there, and you will go through very, very tough times and a lot of discomfort, but there's definitely light at the end of the tunnel, and I strongly believe that this is here for a reason. It's not here for absolutely no reason. It's here to teach you about how to better yourself and better your life. And as Miguel would say, in the first discussion that I had with him when I just met him was, you have the capability to transform yourself from version zero point 0.5 back to version 1 and then version 2 thereafter, 2.0, which is the most powerful version of yourself.
Mm.
So don't despair. Don't ever think that you're living with an illness that's going to kill you. It's merely a condition that you can get out of if you balance yourself again.
Yeah, exactly. And now I look at CFS in terms of recovery expectations. It's like a flu, or it's like someone getting sick. People recover from that all the time, and I see this as no different. It's just we have to follow certain steps. It just may take a little bit longer, but recovery is absolutely possible. And I think in the future, in the very near future, that's going to become the new expectation of like, oh yeah, you got CFS. Oh, just do this and this, and you got long COVID. Right. Here's what you do. Boom. Recovery, recovery. Versus now, the common idea is that you can't recover from this stuff, or at least for CFS, that's more so the case. But I think we're starting to shift that with people like yourself and people in the program. We're showing that is possible. So you've been crushing it. You've been doing absolutely amazing, and you bring a lot to the community and to the calls and your cohort of people you came in with. So just keep it up, man. I'm so excited to see where you're at in another 6 months, and we'll do another follow-up interview here and see what else you've been doing, how much you've been squatting and benching and deadlifting, but everything else too, when your symptoms are all completely gone. But you're crushing it, man.
Definitely, definitely. I think I'm in the next stage of metamorphosis, Miguel. It's about
Yeah,
rebuilding the architectural and urban design practice sustainably. It's about rebuilding family relations correctly and in a healthy way, and about just rebuilding myself in the way I think about things, and letting go of a lot of unnecessary weight there now. So, I've reached that stage, and I think I'm looking forward to this next phase. The symptoms will fall off. Like, I believe all the coaches when they say that, finally. But I know those will fall off, and this is the chance to now really, really start reliving in a much more resilient manner.
absolutely. It's time to thrive,
So,
man. It's time to thrive.
mhm,
You're a thriver. So appreciate your time today, Abdul. Appreciate it very much. So, for everybody watching this right now, Abdul's story very inspiring and very well spoken too. The way you describe things, it's in a way that I can definitely resonate with very much so. And I'm sure a lot of people on this call, they're like, I dealt with that. I dealt with that. So I'm sure they're probably nodding their heads this whole interview right now. So if you guys did need some extra help, we do have different programs for you guys. Just click the link down below. Obviously, we want to make sure you're a perfect fit if you were to come on board. That way, you know, we can hold up to our promise in helping you, and you're not wasting any more time or energy or money on things that don't work. So we want to make sure you're a perfect fit. If we do move forward, you can fill out the questionnaire down below, or you could just try following all the YouTube content for free. But if you did need extra help, we're here for you. We've done it with Abdul and so many other people in the program, and we can help you get there. But always remember, you are a thriver, and you are just one mind shift away from living a life with thriving health. So we will see you guys in the next video. Thanks so much, Abdul. Take it easy.
welcome. Thanks, Miguel.